Hello class, Mr. Garino here. In this video, I'm going to show you how to traverse a for loop and determine the output of a segment of code that's a for loop with an if-else statement inside of it. So here's the problem. We have, say Carol is on a location with one tennis ball. After the following code runs, how many tennis balls will there be at that location? So we know we're starting with one tennis ball. We have a for loop, and a for loop works like this. When you first enter the code, it sets the variable I equal to 0. It checks to see if that value is less than some condition, or meets some condition. In this instance, is it less than 3? 0 is less than 3, so it goes into the loop. It goes into the loop here with our curly brace, goes and does all the code, and then it matches up with the F in the for. That's why indenting is good, so you can see what goes with what. It goes back up to the for loop, and at this point, the initialization does not occur anymore. Now what it does is it goes over to here, the increment. So once it hits this curly brace down here and goes back up, now we're dealing with the increment. So now I gets incremented by whatever it says there. In this case, plus plus means add 1. And from now on, that's always the first thing that happens. So now on meaning through the loop. So now we add 1 to whatever it was initialized at with 0, and we check and see if I is less than 3. And going through this and determining balls present, balls not present, and all that type of stuff can be kind of tricky. And the best way to do it, to keep track of all this stuff, is to make a table. So let's erase all this and make our table and do that. So I would make a nice big table. And I don't know how many columns I'll need. Maybe I made an extra one. It doesn't matter. And here's my headings. The first thing is going to be I. You got to keep track of the increment. The next test is a question mark. I less than 3. See if I can put a dot with my big chubby fingers. I got a dot. The next question is balls present. So question mark, balls present. You can abbreviate. The next thing is whether the balls are present or not, we're going to do something, and that's going to change something. So in math, lots of times we put a delta sign, which means some sort of change. Like delta y means the change in y on the xy coordinates. And then the last thing is some final thing, like what's the thing that's being affected. And here it's going to be the number of tennis balls. And so when we first get to our for loop, we have a certain number of tennis balls. We have 1. That was stated in the instructions. So all of this stuff means nothing at first before we get to the loop. Once we get to the loop, we start off and we initialize I at 0. And then we check, is I less than 3? Yes, or better in computer terminology, true. If it's true, we go into the loop. And then we decide if balls are present. Well, there was one ball to start with, if you remember. That's over here, right? So, if there's one ball present right now, then if balls present is true. So this is our condition that we're checking, balls present. This is what we do if it's true, and this is what we do if it's false. So now that we went into the loop and balls present are true, then we do whatever it says if the condition is true. In this case, we're going to take a ball. So I'm going to represent that as minus 1. And we know that 1 from over here and the minus 1 from over here go together and make a 0, right? Because 1 minus 1 is 0. Then it's done going through all the code of the loop. So then we go back up and we increment I by 1 because now we hit this curly brace over here. So we go back up. We're not doing initialization anymore. Now we're doing increment. So I plus plus makes I 1. And we do have to check, is I less than 3? Yes, that's true. Now we have to say, are balls present? Well, over here is how many balls we have currently, or at the end of the last loop. So now how many do we have there? We have no balls there, right? No tennis balls. So if there's no tennis balls, then if balls present is false. So we do put ball, put ball. So let's just record our false first before we get ahead of ourselves. Put ball twice means we're adding 2. And 0 plus 2 is equal to 2. We go back up through to our for loop. We increment our I again. We check and see, and increment 1 plus 1 is 2. We check and see if I is less than 3. Well, 2 is less than 3, so this is true. Are there balls present? There's 2 balls there, so that's true. And when there are balls present, we take a ball, so we subtract 1. And 2 minus 1 is 1. Then we go back, and we go back up to the for loop, and the first thing we do is increment again. I is equal to 3. We ask ourselves, is 3 less than 3? That would be false. So we cannot go into our loop. We can't do any of this stuff. We're done. And the answer is 1. So that's how you traverse a for loop on paper and pencil, basically, so that you can answer a question on the AP exam and get it correct. Now, this was a lot of stuff I wrote down. I may have broken it up a little bit more than I had to, like, is I less than 3? We probably could have just said when I gets to 3, stop. We know that. Maybe that's an extra column. But I broke it down a lot so that everyone could see what's going on. Furthermore, to illustrate that the more you break it down, the easier it is to see what's going on, and the more likely you will be able to get the correct answer. The less you break it down, the more chance you can make a mistake. And the worst thing you could do is try and do all this crap in your head. Because quite honestly, after the first step, I get all discombobulated and confused. I don't know where the hell I am. So I just write things down. And how many steps did it take? I had to write T a couple of times, F a couple of times, a few numbers, and draw some lines and columns. It doesn't take that long, and you get the answer right. And let's face it, if anyone's ever going to ask you to do this on a test, they can't say if I is less than 5,000, going up by ones. It's going to take you 3 days to make the table. That's ridiculous, okay? So on any type of test, you're going to have to write how many columns? 1, 2, 3, 5 at the most, maybe 6, okay? It's not going to take that long. Write it all out so that you can get it right and feel really good about yourself. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.